morning, good afternoon. That's because of different time zones in the world. And Guyanese and others
all over the world watch this program. We've got calls from Qatar. We've got calls from different European countries. So good evening again, good night, good morning. It's the UK. It's 4 hours ahead of us. So if we 8:30, then the UK would be past midnight. This is the GILDARIE Freddie Kissoon show. We come to you live on Guyanese Critic Facebook page and on the platform called TBN News, Daybreak News. You go to both of those platforms and you will see us live now, also on YouTube. We start with an unfortunate incident and an unusual dimension. The first is an unfortunate incident. I don't know if you believe in the supernatural. I grew up with parents who strongly believed in the supernatural. I got older and rejected that. But there may be something supernatural stalking Leonard GILDARIE. As you will know, he announced on this program a few weeks ago. He was driving and he saw a snake in his car and he thought he got rid of the snake. And as he kept driving, when he reached the cultural center, the snake attacked him and tried to eat him up. He ran out of the car and shouted to passing vehicles, but no one stopped. So GILDARIE survived. And then this afternoon, GILDARIE fell into the gutter and is unable to walk. So Leonard GILDARIE is not here with us this evening. I hope he can walk into the studio on Friday evening. I did suffer the knee collapse, and I walked into the studio with my stick. So let's wish Leonard well, and let's hope that there's nothing supernatural stalking him. The unusual dimension. I don't think anywhere in the world, if you have an interview program or a chat show and two medical doctors are on the program, you would expect that they would not talk about medicine at all. And I emphasize the word at all. We have two doctors in the studio this evening, and they will not be talking about medicine. They'll be talking about politics. And I don't want to take up much time, but I can't remember how many doctors we had in politics. Dr. Jagan was a dentist, Gunraj Kumar was a doctor, and maybe if we box our brains, we'll find a few doctors. But on the program this evening is someone who was involved for 5 months in election rigging in the thick of things and was arrested and taken to Brickdam police station. Well, I know that locked up. I spent 3 days and 3 nights there. It's a stinking, as they say in common parlance, dirty lockup. I hope it's they have redone it by now. That's Dr. Josh Kanai. He is here in the capacity of someone who experienced the 5 months of rigging. He is a deputy leader of one of the longest serving election parties in Guyana, United Republican Party. And next to him is Dr. Mark France, the leader of a new and united Guyana, and I think ANUG this month, March, will be having a representative in Parliament. I don't know if it's Dr. France. Maybe if time permits, he will tell us if it's him. He is a fine gentleman, and I'm impressed with his modesty. We invited a third of the new parties, the new movement, but Dr. Asha Kissoon said she couldn't make it, and she would give us a deputy, but it doesn't look like he could make it either. So our topic this evening is the election anniversary. The election anniversary of March 2020 is not 1 day, it's not 2 days. It's 5 months anniversary because things went on from March the 2nd right up to the swearing in, right up to the end of July when the Court of Appeal finally ruled that everything is over. March the 8th, which is today, should have been the end of the election saga on March 2020. On March the 8th in 2020, the High Court ruled, Chief Justice ruled that she can hear, the court can hear what was going on and if what was taking place was proper. That's because the lawyers for APNU, AFC, argued that the courts could only hear the matter in an election petition. The Chief Justice, hearing the case on March the 8th today, said that an election petition is when an election is complete. Then you file a petition. The election of March 2020 was not complete on March the 8th, and so she ruled that the court can hear petition by one of the opposition parties, the lead opposition parties, the PPP, as to what Mingo was doing. The Chief Justice ruled on March the 8th, 2 years ago, and that decision should have brought an end to the March 2020 election, and we should have had a result on March the 9th. She ruled that claimant Mingo, Region 4 tabulation presiding officer, should tabulate the votes according to the statement of poll, and he has to adhere to the wishes of the court. That was the ruling of the court. Mr. Mingo did adhere to the ruling of the courts, but it's the shape the adherence took. He moved his tabulation from GCOM Command Center in Hatfield Street, the Ashwin Building, and took it to the GCOM headquarters. And his tabulation consists of a piece of cardboard, as they say in common parlance, a dirty piece of bed sheet, and a defective projector. And he began to announce election results for Region 4 faster than the sound of travel. In minutes, in seconds, he was putting on the statements of polls. So within 10 seconds, you had about 20 statements of polls. It was such a caricature that the world saw it as a farce, further galvanizing the world to speak about the rigging of the election. We will show you a clip of Jonathan Yearwood telling you at that GCOM headquarters what Mingo was doing. And when you look at it, if you were young, you would never believe that. You had no experience of what was happening. Dr. Bawa Jagdeo, the Vice President, said in March 2020, PPP supporters and PPP members had no idea what a rigged election was all about. And I think the two guests in our program, when you look at them, you will see because of their age, they had no idea what was a rigged election in 68, 73, 78, and 1980. Our guest this evening, Deputy Leader of the United Republican Party, Dr. Josh Kanai, medical doctor, and the leader of a new and united Guyana, Dr. Mark France. We will take it alphabetically and start with Dr. Mark France. But before, the usual handshake. Thanks for being here again, and thanks for being here. And I can assure you, because of your youthfulness and your interest in politics, you can bet your bottom dollar we will have you here again. Dr. France, can we start, if you don't mind, can we start with a clip? If the operator is hearing us, can we start with a clip and then we'll have your comments. Then we'll go to another clip and have Josh comment. So, operator, can we start with our first clip?
I have no idea. It's a top story. I think there's somebody locked in a room upstairs. Who's the patient? Come, let me take you out.
what you have just witnessed there is that court marshals are outside the office of, or the room that the chairwoman of the GCOM is barricaded herself in. She is hiding from the court marshals who have an injunction to deliver on her to prevent them from moving further with the sinister plot. So she's locked herself away in the room, and strangely now we are seeing that an ambulance is turned up with a bunch of persons with first aid equipment and so forth, and a stretcher to move her out from here. So we don't know how that will play out. The marshals, I think, are...
Obviously, you can see the police is guarding the steps.
So that is the room that the GCOM chairwoman is believed to have locked herself in. You have the PVPC GCOM Commissioner Shadik sitting outside. The EMT, they're outside. Police have been guarding the door. So we don't know what's happening. We've been hearing all sorts of speculation as to what is happening with some of these staff. That some of them are being threatened, their lives are being threatened if they do not take certain courses of action. So the EMT went up, and now they're coming on back. So apparently, whatever plan that was, I don't think they probably thought it through. We don't know what's going on there. We don't know. It's strange what's going on. We don't know if something is wrong with her. We don't know if someone has her in that room. What the heck is really going on? We do not know. But the police have been in front of that door all along. In there. So they're leaving without even any further information. This is another bit of drama. They came with an oxygen tank and so forth. So they just came, they knocked a few times, and they're leaving. So I don't know. I gather the court marshals are somewhere around waiting to serve that injunction, but we do not know. Shadik is trying to get a response from her to ensure that she's okay. Just even a confirmation that she's okay. We don't know what is happening in there with her, who's in there with her, what they're doing in there with her. All we want is a response that she's okay in there, because we've been hearing all manner of things.
Good, gentlemen. That was one clip of the confusion in the Ashwin building and people getting conveniently sick. Dr. Franz, when you saw that, what, as a leader of a political party, what goes through your mind, and what went through your mind as a young man never experienced a rig election that will make leaders prominent rulers? What went through your mind when you saw that clip? Claimant Mingo, returning officer, fell suddenly ill and then the next day looked quite good.
Hi, good night to the Guyanese viewers. Good night to all of my brothers and sisters out there. I would just like to say a happy belated Pago to everyone. Yesterday was our wonderful festival, and it's one of the few festivals whereby we see all Guyanese mixing and mingling happily. And this is something that we really want to see, Mr. Kissoon. A lot of this division that we see is sometimes only during election cycle for a couple of months, a couple of days. And when we really see our true celebrations, we see that Guyanese can indeed work together. And I hope that continues. For all of our female population, I would also like to say a happy International Women's Day. Today is a very auspicious day to all of the women folk in our country and beyond. And I'd like to give our little greeting from a new United Guyana to the women folk. With regard to your question that you asked, it brings back a lot of memory to me, these events which occurred 3 years ago. I may even go a little back to the day when the lists were submitted, nomination day, and I can vividly remember myself feeling edgy, jumping a bit scared, walking past those huge crowds just to submit our list. It was the first time that I was doing that. It was the first time I was involved in politics. And for me, it is a big step. And it was a big step for a young man looking to be involved in politics. And I know that many others, just like myself, would have subjected themselves to this for the first time. And if you look at the various lists that are out there that GCOM has, you're going to see many young people. And it is a bit sad that so many of my young friends, both from both sides of the divide, would have allowed themselves to be subjected to such behavior and to not have more of a say. And this is something that I always do. I always call out those persons who would have been a part of the party, that would have been involved in this type of behavior and did not call out their leader. I think if Guyanese, especially our young leaders, want to lead from the front, then you got to start calling out when something is done correctly and when something is done bad. And this is something that has, up to this day, not been done, especially by the majority of youths who belong to the major opposition. So 3 years, and in 3 years, if there's any silver lining, I must say is that I have not heard of any other illness suffered by Mr. Mingo so far. So if the little scare that he had on that morning was the only illness, and in 3 years he has not suffered anything, to God be the glory. And I hope that he continues in wonderful health, and somewhere along the line he can give back to the Guyanese people something in terms of his work, his action, some memory, some positive memory for us to live, and not this memory of the past election.
You weren't one of the doctors who treated him?
No, actually, I was not. He was in the emergency section, and I know that it was the head of the Department of Emergency who actually looked at him, along with some of the other ER doctors.
Okay. If the operator is hearing me, can we have a second clip? So Dr. Kanai will comment on that. There is a clip with Leonard Schumann, the leader of the Liberty and Justice Party, announcing the arrest of Dr. Kanai. But I think that is not the second, that hasn't been queued up to be the second clip. So could our operator show the second clip, and then we'll have Josh Kanai's reaction to it?
So the General Secretary for the new movement has been arrested for trying to ascertain the well-being of Madam Chair. Madam Chair was just escorted out of the building by the authorities, by the police officers. We don't know her whereabouts at this moment. There was also one of our electoral observers, one of our electoral observer in the room that wanted to witness what was going there. Did not commit any breakage of anything, did not do anything. All he did was to stand there and observe what was happening, and he was arrested also. Both the General Secretary of the new movement, Mr. Josh Kanai, has been arrested and has been taken to Brickdam, and one of the observers who stood there was also being arrested for observing. At this point, we see the police rushing back into the building. We don't know what their motivations are at this point, and if there are other acts that are afoot from these people here.
I think I got my wires crossed there. That was Lennox Schumann announcing the arrest and assignment to the Brickdam station cell for Dr. Josh Kanai. I guess, Dr. Kanai, that will stay with you, just like how many of us older than you in the 70s and 80s that saw what went on with rig elections. I guess that will stay with you for a very long time. You weren't doing anything illegal. You were protecting the right to vote.
That's correct. That's very accurate, Mr. Kissoon. And looking at the entire episode there brought back a lot of memories and a lot of heartfelt emotions. I even had a post establishing how my grandmother would have told me about this back in the 70s, but I always dismissed it. Right? So coming back to where I wanted to start it, I must say goodnight to all my Guyanese brothers and sisters, and I must agree with Dr. Franz that Pagua is the unity that we need, and all the holidays in this aspect, the unity is what we try to encompass, and that is what One Guyana and what we're trying to build, and what it is trying to just put out there to get everyone in shape and respect each other, basically. And to all the women, continue to be bold, continue to be strong, and continue to motivate each other, and continue to expand yourself within this digital age that we're having at the moment. So back to the question, Mr. Kissoon. This aspect of the election was quite shocking for someone that came into it the first time. I was a young man coming in, heard the stories of the past, heard of all the rigging that would have occurred, but as I said before, I didn't take it to heart. And coming into the election, I came in with a fair amount of knowledge of how we can go about having a smooth process and all of the electoral laws and the protocols, etc. And as Dr. Franz would have highlighted, even on before nomination day, we were bullied by the APN UAFC cabal. We were bullied because we were basically, the new movement at that time was basically the first in the line to hand up their list. And at that time, they had come and the night before they came and they forced themselves in front of us. So I was looking at these people and I was like, these guys are just bullies. And they came in their large numbers. We basically didn't have a say. And then I let that go. We came on to the election. The process was quite sturdy on the day of election. However, things started to fall apart bit by bit, where we saw in the first clip Mr. Mingo having some heart attack, as he claimed. And as Dr. Franz said on to this day, we haven't heard of any illness. I haven't seen him in my line of work, which is at the pathology department, thankfully. And hopefully he's doing well, but the entire fiasco that led up to me being arrested was something that will remain with me for the rest of my life, because that part where we ended up was between a rock and a hard place. We were trying to serve recount notices. We were trying to get Region 4 to be recount. The server was there to give the chairman her slip of notice that there's been a hold to the counting, and there's a recount letter to be served. Honorable Ramson was there trying to give his recount letter, and then all of a sudden the chairman disappears. For quite a few hours the chairman disappears, went up to the third floor. We did not know if she's going to come out, when she's going to come out, and the clock would have been ticking. Earlier that afternoon, Mr. Mingo made a declaration, so that made it even more fearful. And on that declaration, we saw signatures of people that weren't supposed to sign. So that in all of itself led us to we got very agitated. We started chanting to free the chairwoman, to release her from hostage. And we ended up upstairs because we saw the paramedics coming in. We wanted to know if she was ill, if something was happening to her in that room that she was locked away in. And we ventured upstairs. There were doors without the handles. They were locked, but without handles, so we couldn't access them. And in my right-mindedness, started to look around, started to see which one has access. None were having access, so we decided to start stomping on the door. I started kicking in the door. Another colleague was there, started kicking as well. The door finally came open, and there was a room in another room, and Miss Chairwoman was there, looking very flustered, very ill. And from then on, everything just went haywire. Person started trying to get into the room. They pulled me out of the room. Well, we being the police force that was there, pulled me out of that room, asked me to put my hands up in the air, treated me like a criminal. And then subsequently ended up at the Breakdown police station after a few hours of them interrogating me in that room, telling me a bunch of nonsense, basically, that why y'all doing this, why y'all continuously trying to pull at this election is a free and fair election, etc., etc. So they were taunting us basically in that room, and those memories of that entire event, it's going to be something that I will pass on to my children and my grandchildren, because, as I said, my grandmother tried to pass it on to me. I didn't listen, so I had to learn the hard way. And then from there, everything went down and we went into recount, as you would know.
Dr. Fans, from March to July, this country was in the eyes of the world. I'm sure all the top countries in the world, Brazil, India, China, United States, they were all looking because we were the latest big oil find. Guyana was being written up in all the international business journals and magazines and what have you. So for 5 months, there was a lonely space in most people's heart, but especially those of my age who were active in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Where were you in the space of those events for 5 months? Not where were you in quarantine at the Georgetown Hospital, etc. That body of events for 5 months, where were you?
When election day came, when E-Day came, voting day came, I was actually in charge of Region 6, looking at the Region 6 aspect for my party. So I was in charge of ensuring that everything went smoothly for Region 6. And that is where I went. I voted. I was there to ensure that all of the votes from the various polling stations reached the head office, which is located up the quarantine. And initially, I know there was a request for a recount. Ganesh was on your show some time back, and he mentioned that Region 4 was not the only region that had requested a recount. Region 3, whereby they were refused, and Region 6 and Region 5, those regions had requested recounts. So I know Region 6 had begun a recount the next day, and it was called off. So after that recount was called off, then I came down to Georgetown, and that was when the Region 4 count was being done at the Ashman's building. Initially, I was one of the persons who were there myself, Mr. Yearwood, along with some others. But Mr. Yearwood, he took the front line being there, because I can remember after all of the issues, they only permitted one staff per party to be in the building that was counting initially. And that is where Mr. Yearwood had the issue with Miss Joseph, right? When she was being very rude to some of the election observers, including some of the foreigners. And then after the entire issue finished at the Ashman's building, they took it and they had an issue at at Kingston. However, during the entire period, I was critically involved in ensuring the smooth flow, or at least the representation of my party, to have a smooth election flow, so that when the count was being done at Kingston, I took over from Mr. Yearwood. I was there when it was finished, when the results were announced initially, and then they had an issue with the results. After the count at Kingston, I was involved in ensuring that the contents of the ballot boxes were secured. I was part of those persons who were there on a nightly basis, daily, nightly basis, guarding those ballot boxes, ensuring that the contents were not tampered with, ensuring that the locks were on, ensuring that no foul play was going to happen, because we had already heard instances of a similar type of foul play during the prior election, although that one was not studied in detail, right? And as soon as the issues finished and they decided on the recount, when President Granger signed on to the agreement put forward by CARICOM, I was again amongst the leaders, ensuring that my party has an adequate team to be present for the recount, and I was there during the entire duration of the recount. So I was critically involved from in the lead up, but for my party, up to when the results were announced, and then when the swearing-in happened.
That body of events that went on for 5 months, where were you in the vicinity, in the space of that body of events? Not where were you at the Joshua Hospital, or not where were you with your family going for a trip on the West Coast. Where were you in the vortex of election rigging for 5 months?
Well, I was at the front line for the new movement, and as well interchanging with Dr. Kissoon and Dr. Gerald Ford. Mentally, that was quite draining. That entire 5 months was quite draining at different periods. There were periods of up and there were periods of down, especially when there was court hearings and we thought that we were going to get somewhere, and we thought we were going to actually have some results. That ended up having to be a no, and we were in the back and went back to recounts. Physically, I was similar to what Dr. Franz would have said. I would have been at the front with my party. We would have been guarding containers. We heard of all of the instances where fields were set afire at Non-Pearl.
Collagen.
Yeah, at Collagen. Fields were set afire there, so we were trying to guard containers there, trying to guard containers at GCOM's office as well. We were there when the containers were moving. We were there when the agreement, the ladies from the CARICOM state came, and they would have asked put a solution on the table, and the leaders would have signed on. We were pushing extraordinarily for that to happen, because that was one of the best way forwards to have that recount done, the entire Region 4. And then during the recount itself, I was managing my team at T&M. We were busy trying to get everyone in order. All of the rooms had to be filled. Persons were there every day. Snacks and meals were provided. And also making sure that when the tabulation process is beginning, that all of the SOPs leave those rooms and come directly to our agent so that we can tabulate and move forward with those numbers on a daily basis. And then finally, after that 5 months, coming down to August, the recount was almost finished. We were seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. And at that point, we were sighing relief. We were saying, finally, it's done. The last hammer hit the table, and we were on the way to swearing in a government.
Dr. Franz, for the 5 months, you obviously, you became the leader of ANUC, so it would have meant in March 2020, you would have been high up in the party hierarchy and therefore would have been assigned important positions in the elections. In those 5 months, did you ever feel that this is it? I am a young doctor. I love my country. I have entered politics, but this country looks like it's going down.
Actually, no. I am someone who always looks at the glass half filled. And in the 21st century, it's very difficult for anyone to think about rigging an election and getting off successfully. We have seen coups d'etats happening in the 21st century. In Mali, the other day we had one. It's still happening. But after all of the revolutionary changes that we would have seen in the early 2000s and afterwards, all over the world, the appetite for persons rigging elections, for persons taking governance by force or taking government by force, the world no longer permits same. Worse yet, in the backyard of the largest, we can say the largest democracy if you're looking at the economic power. If you're looking at numbers, then some may say India. But especially in the backyard of the United States, this is no longer the time of the Cold War. America and the other countries, they're not going to turn a blind eye to keep someone in government there if it's against the will of the people. And with the advent of social media, with the advent of the various internet services and having news out there as quickly as it happens currently, it is nigh on impossible for someone to think that in this the 21st century they're going to try to rig an election. And whomever were the intellectual authors of such a notion or such a motion, they really miscalculated. And as such, when they really met up with the resistance and when the various sanctions and other I would say when the other forces started acting against them, there was not much that they can do but to comply with what is it that the powers of the Western world were saying.
I'm directing the same question to you, Dr. Kanai. March the 2nd to July the 31st. Sheer, unmitigated confusion that was mind-boggling. No Guyanese knew what would have happened to Guyana. Would CARICOM survive? Would there be mass exodus of illegal immigrants? Is there a coup in which a government will now be permanent as 70% of the country wasn't aware of in the 70s and the 80s? As you went about your business at Georgetown Hospital, then you went home back, of course, met your family, then back to work, back to the supermarkets, elsewhere. In those 5 months as a leading activist involved in trying to safeguard democracy, did you believe at any time in April, May, that Guyana was gone?
Well, initially, as I said earlier, those feelings and the mental stability were a bit up and down in the initial phases, probably like in the month of March. But when we started to have that recount and we started to see through all of these little stupidness, I would say, of their plans and how they were trying to argue themselves in court and they were trying to just pull at straws, all of that just became something to laugh at. And it's just, I looked at it as just being a process, and this is going to come to an end soon. Because the court battles were all there, they were plain as day, and we saw light in most of the court battles coming down. When the recount was coming, I gained a lot of hope. I gained a lot of faith in where we were going and what we were doing. Because we came together as people and third forces, we came together to claim back our democracy. That's how we ended up as the guardians of democracy. With all of that being said, during the July-August period, they were just people to look at and laugh at, especially when it comes to dead people voting. I have a bunch of living friends, some from industry where I'm from, that would have been called up and said, this person is dead. And I just kept looking at them and laughing at them in their faces because they were just trying to clench at straws, just trying to clench, and they're just putting themselves down. I looked at it that way, and eventually it worked out. It came all for the best, and the country evolved, and the country is evolving at the moment.
Put your jacket apart. What is that?
The Guardians of Democracy.
Guardians of Democracy.
Yes. So when we were guarding containers...
We're seeing that on the screen, Guardians of... Let's look for the purpose of our viewers. You guys are aware of them. But there may be some person, some Guyanese in Italy or some Guyanese somewhere in Montserrat or St. Kitts or somewhere that may not have seen these clips. Now here is a clip in which a particular person is so shocked at Mingo announcing the results that I think he kept saying no, 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 monotonously almost for 10 minutes. Operator, can you show us another clip, please?
This man is the illegal results without verifying statement of poll. That is what this man is doing right now. That is what this man is doing. Everybody is here. Mudasan chanting. Everybody. Everybody. Look what is happening here. Oh my goodness. I can't. Everyone, the whole. This, what is happening? Unbelievable scenes. You have the Region 4 returning officer, Mr. Mingo. Mr. Mingo is trying to declare the results for Region 4 that he has padded for the PNC. They have not verified the SOPs and he wants to announce the results without it being verified. This is the level we have gone. He tried earlier.
That was Mingo declaring an election that some people emotionally charged in the room could not believe in, saying this can't happen. This. I want to show one more clip in which Jonathan Yearwood, what he was doing remind me when I was young and I was part of the anti-dictatorship force in the 70s and 80s. I will ask our operator to show Jonathan Yearwood explaining how rigging is going on. Here was a politician out in the street explaining to the media how an election was being rigged, and Dr. France and Dr. Kanai. I saw that in 68. I was a young polling agent for the PPP in St. Thomas More Primary School. I saw that in 73. I saw that in 1980. So when I was in the studio with GILDARIE at Kaito Radio, and Jonathan Yearwood say, and all of those statements of poll, the numbers are wrong. You know, I couldn't believe this was happening, Guyana. Let's get Jonathan Yearwood explaining how the rigging is going on, the final clip, for those who may not have seen it. Okay, sorry about that, folks, but we queued up one with Jonathan Yearwood. But the point is, they were he was announcing when he left the GCOM head office how Mingo was rigging the elections. Well, let's get back to our two political leaders. Dr. France, is there any time in those 5-month period you felt that there could have been a breakout of violence that would have had a conspiratorial direction that would have been very, very sad for Guyana in the 5 months. The heated, the emotions in Ashman Building, the point where those who were losing felt, no, we were losing and we can stop this losing.
Yes, there was. If you can remember, there was a big gathering on Lamaha Street, whereby prayers were being said, songs were being sung, and various leaders of the now opposition were there singing, "We have won, we have won." Right? Now, we're all humans. And if you were going to tell your supporter that you have won an election, and if you're going to go selling it to them, maybe not explaining how you won the election, then of course you're toying with people's feelings. And such can lead to disturbances and unwanted occurrences. If there is any time the people of Guyana have been wrongfully led, it would have been in those moments, because we are all sure that on the Tuesday after the election on Monday, everyone had an idea of who had won the election. And so if you would have gone telling your supporters that you have the SOPs showing that you have won the election, then it is you playing with the minds of your supporters, and that trust that you may have taken from them, it's something that you can never regain, or you have to work extremely hard to get back that trust. If there is any good thing, it is that, and I've mentioned this the last time I was here, the ultimate leader of the then government, former President David Granger, he stood by his word in saying that he's going to wait on what GCOM decides. And he did that. But during that 5 months, the number of times, the amount of times that persons from his political organization, from the coalition that took part in that election, persons from that grouping would have claimed victory. And because of this, their supporters would have believed them. It was opportune for us here in Guyana that no extreme violence didn't happen, because it has happened in other countries. It has happened in Guyana before. When you look back at the various elections after 92, you've seen instances of violence in the street. And we were very lucky this time that for whatever reason, the various forces who control the majority of the persons there, no one called out anybody to come go on the street, to burn, to loot, and to cause problems. Maybe some small demonstrations, but that was about it.
Josh, you felt any time that, look, this thing is going in a bad direction. This may be trouble in Guyana once more. State of emergency. People have to stay in their homes. It looked from my perspective with the 5 months that any time it could have happened.
Yeah, the environment was rich. It had all of the, as Doc pointed out, it had all of the instances where people were misled and people were blatantly lied to. But thankfully, the COVID pandemic came, so that made a lot of people very touchy about going out on the streets. There were some demonstrations. I think on the East Coast there were some demonstrations, but those did not escalate. And the leaders, they basically put their foot down and said, we will not tell our people to go out on the streets, and that is commendable. But I think all of this is owing to the pandemic that broke out at that same time, because a lot of people were scared of the COVID. And as Doc said, we got a bit lucky, because some persons that got heated, that I saw personally, I believe they were capable of doing a lot of things that people say mad people do, right? And they don't look at the consequences. And also, looking at the entire situation, other than the COVID pandemic and the leaders being a bit strong with their people, a lot of their people saw through their blatant lies. A lot of their followers saw through their blatant lies, the educated followers especially, and they basically detached themselves from that cabal. So all of that in itself gave us that great opportunity to show that we can have attempt rigging of election, but a country doesn't have to burn and people don't have to die for that. So we got lucky. We did.
I think you were right. I think the COVID, when the COVID thing came, I live next to Giffland, and at 6 o'clock I would walk my dog, and the place was very, very lonely. I don't think people wanted to come out. But let's move now to the individual interaction of Dr. Mark Francis from Anug in the 5-month period and Dr. Josh Kanai from the New Movement. Can you recall any specific particularistic encounter that was unpleasant from the other side during the 5-month rigging? Did anyone ever say anything insulting? The hell with Anug, what Anug doing here, what you, was any racial thing? You look predominantly Amerindian, he looks predominantly Indian. Was there any, I'm talking about a particular encounter, not crowd saying, who is fans, who is can I go to hell? I'm talking about the...
No, for me, no. If there's any good is that I have had interactions with members of both sides. I do have friends from both sides of the divide.
I'm talking about the time when
And
this
so,
was
yeah,
happening.
so...
So the other side, they knew you.
So they knew me, they knew of me, and even though, for example, the recount was going on for 3 long months at the Ortachong Center, there was a good camaraderie between, amongst the various groupings that were there. So, for example, we had good interactions. I can speak about Anug and Anug supporters. We had good interactions with persons from the PPPC. We had good interactions with persons from the APNU AFC. Yes, there would have been some heated moments during the recount whereby someone would have gotten up, made some point, tried to clarify something, and there may have been voices raised with different opinions. But generally, it was all done in a healthy environment. And the same was maintained amongst the leaders of the various parties. So I can tell you for sure that, for example, Leno Craig was there. We could have had a conversation, spoke with him, and everything was good. David Patterson was there, had a good conversation with him. Ganesh was always making noise in one of the counting rooms. Miss Annette Ferguson was always there making noise, but it was always done in more a humorous nature. It was done out of humor, but at the same time sticking to the point. At no time I can remember personally was there any increase in the tension or the various levels, at least where I am concerned. It may have happened with other persons. I have seen other individuals, especially those who support the ruling party currently, they would have gotten incensed and would have carried on social media with various persons from the opposition, but it was not, it didn't happen to me, and I cannot recall it happening with any member of an United Guyana.
What's your experience on an individual encounter? Was there any such?
He was in lockup.
There were a few actually, especially the recount.
Some places beat you up at the breakdown, huh?
No, they didn't beat me up. I was a bit too strong back then.
Okay.
But individually, at the recount especially, as Doc said, we would have gotten into exchanges within the counting rooms. And one instance is where one of these PNC Cabal members, he was very, I think he carried feelings, as we would say. And he came out of that recount room, met me downstairs at the snacking area, and he started telling me about my, the whole racial slur and slangs.
Is that so?
Well, in the corner that wasn't loud.
Is he a well-known PNC official?
I recall his name. I think he's actually not too well known, but
yeah.
He's Kadaki was the name.
What? He's very high.
Yeah.
He's very high in the WP in Buxton. The WP consists of about 5 members now, and he's one of them. He has a social media program. Well, from now on, as you're speaking about him, we have to tone down the language. Or maybe we should move off it, because these people are so presumptuous that they will sue you. So as an educated man, maybe you could continue, but watch your language.
Definitely. No, well, it was very strange, and so even some of my members.
Kadaki Amsterdam is his name.
Well, I only knew him as a
Yeah,
Kadaki. I don't know the last name. I wasn't very au fait with him at that point. But a few of my other members had some issues as well. But people just coming to them after and talking, you know, a bit harsh, a bit tense. Not all of them were racial, but just persons getting in their feelings and having exchanges after the recon sessions. Also, I recall one session where this wasn't with me, but I saw that where Miss Joseph's daughter was there and she was carrying on and getting on, and she was put outside and she had a few slurs to send across over the eating area. So there were moments, as Doc pointed out, that persons got heated, persons got in their feelings, persons took things personal, especially when you countered them in the recount room. And from then on, just saw persons trying to get at you and get into your zone where they can make you upset. So we had a few of those instances, and personally, I had a few as well.
Dr. Frantz, we have 1.5 minutes more. Operator signal to us. What's your final thoughts on March 2020, and where will it be in the walls of your mind in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? By that time, you may be a guy with big kids going to university.
Hopefully it's free by then.
Okay.
March.
But you're going to be Parliament soon.
March of 2020 is but an initiation to Guyanese politics for me. I am glad in a way that I would have experienced everything that happened in my first electoral experience. Right? I've seen how the system is run. I've seen issues with the system. And GCOM, we do have a lot of issues with GCOM still. I've seen persons trying to make a system that functions quite well questioned. The system, the electoral system that we have, it functions quite well. You can have your results in a matter of hours. You can have your results the same day if everything is done as it's supposed to. If GCOM and those who are working with GCOM does their job, if they do their job rather. But the experience that I have, it will forever be with me as an initiation into Guyanese politics. To never forget that persons will try through whatever means to win, and that I should always be prepared. But at the same time, I must always be the bigger individual, looking to bring both sides together, looking for us to iron out any issues, any difficulty that we have, looking for us to do it together in a transparent manner, explaining to the Guyanese people that what is happening, that what is affecting us, and how we can resolve it together. Because that is the only way that we as Guyanese can move forward, and move forward in the manner and in the time frame that we need to, for us to benefit from the good of this country.
Dr. Kanai, about half a minute more we got.
Well, as for me, this thing is going to be with me throughout my entire life. I will pass this down to my kids and grandkids. And as Doc said, this is an entry into politics that we got a full taste of everything. I learned all of the election codes and the laws and the protocols within that period and can say well versed in them. So it's going to remain with me. It's something that I look back on. There are good moments and bad moments. There are moments sometimes I use to motivate me to keep going and to ensure that our country remains a democracy. Our country remains a nation that will prosper. And Doc pushes for everybody coming together. But on my end, there must be opposition, there must be government. And those two going at it all the time is the best way to move forward. Because if you have one government, then things can go haywire and people can get out of hand with no opposition, of course. So maybe that's something we can debate another time.
I'm going to end on a note that you have no imagination about. That's because I'm pretty older than you. But when I was very young in primary school, there was a worldwide hit by an English singer named Billy Fury, a song called Halfway to Paradise. And it's a very, very large hit. Dozens and dozens of other singers continue to sing it. It's one of the older type of songs that will never grow old. Billy Fury had the exact hairstyle like yours.
Thanks to the barbers.
Go on YouTube and punch in Billy Fury Halfway to Paradise. It's a very
Definitely.
beautiful song too.
I think my barb is better than him. Elegant cuts.
Okay. Dr. France,
Mr. Kissoon, thank you very much.
we will do this again.
We sure.
Definitely. Most definitely.
Definitely.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Good. Billy.
Billy Fury.
No. Josh.